Hi all, Adi here from Hunts and Johns. Thank you so much for clicking on the video. Today I'm in deepest, darkest Sussex and I'm in a little village called Shipley. Now this church we're going to visit isn't any ordinary village church. This one has proper medieval pedigree. So here we've got Knights Templar, Norman architecture. There's nearly 900 years of history wrapped up in this building. A member of a foreign royal family visited here and attended church, and it's also the burial place of the composer John Ireland. So let's go and explore. Oh, there's one more thing, nearly forgot. Instead of using lawnmowers for keeping the graveyard nice and tidy and keeping the grass and weeds down, they actually keep some sheep here. So I shall show you. Let's go. Before I get into telling you about the church, if you ever watched the TV series Jonathan Creek, the windmill that he lived in is just over to the right hand side here as we go into the churchyard, and at the end of this video I'm going to show you around there, so stay tuned if you're a fan of the show. So I'm just showing you some beautiful old carvings on the gateposts as we head into the churchyard, and you can see these huge slabs of Horsham stone. On the right hand side you notice a small flock of sheep, which is the first time I've ever seen sheep grazing in a graveyard. You can see the Jonathan Creek windmill there in the background. So they work hard keeping the grass down, and it gives the whole place a really peaceful atmosphere. You've got the living and you've got the dead, and obviously the sheep are very well looked after, and you can see there because it's winter their food is being supplemented. And then over the other side of the graveyard there's more sheep here grazing quite happily, and there's some very substantial tombs around here, which is quite unusual for such a small little village. So you can see how important this place was back in the day. There must have been some very influential families to have such substantial tombs. Unfortunately, most of them, as you can see, are completely worn away, so I couldn't really read any of them, but I'm sure there's some very good parish records if you're interested. You can notice this lovely wooden porch. So the porch dates from the 14th century and it was added not long after the original Norman core, and it shows how the church has evolved with the times. And you can see inside here on the right hand side there's a very large piece of local ironstone, like a medieval bollard, and it's believed that this was a stone mooring point that may once have been used to tie up boats when the nearby river was navigable before it silted up, and boats would have come up to a small dock or landing by the church. So you can imagine centuries ago worships might not have only arrived by foot but by boat and coming up the river to this very door. And as we walk into the entrance of the church you can see this beautiful stone carving and this beautiful Norman arch, which is in very good condition considering its age. There's been a church on this site for a very long time. The earliest record dates back to 1073. But the building you see today, or at least much of it, dates from the mid-12th century, around 1140, when the site was granted to the Knights Templar. And this font is a 14th century font. So this building is believed to be one of the earliest Templar building projects in England. The church was probably built on the site of a much earlier Saxon predecessor. And I love "No elf on the shelf, Jesus wants you in the pew." Very amusing. So right away you get the sense that this is a place with deep roots, a place that has been a centre of spiritual life in the local community. And you can see this lovely map that was created for the millennium. So there's a history here of almost 1,000 years. And this is a very simple but effective plaque to the great composer John Arland, who is buried in the graveyard. The church has what's described as an axial tower, which is a central tower with the chancel to the east. To the west is the nave, and then the north aisle, a vestry and a south porch. One of the many delights inside this church are the stained glass windows, and there's 6 beautiful windows by Charles Kempe, whose studios produce many acclaimed windows in churches and cathedrals across England. And up to the right hand side, we'll get a little bit closer in a minute, there is a beautiful window dedicated to the Scouts, because they've got links with the local community. And there's loads of war memorials to the local men who lost their lives in both of the wars. And as we approach the tower arches, you can see that they are deeply set with carved mouldings and roll moulding on the soffit and the corbels, and some are shaped like heads. So it's subtly blending austerity with artistry. And here's a plaque that states that Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands attended the service on Christmas Eve. And then there's this beautifully carved pulpit. And a beautiful brass lectern. And then this is the spot where the Queen Mother and Princess Margaret attended church in 1952, which is, it's really astounding to understand how important this place was and still is, given how small the little parish is. And here's a beautiful alabaster and marble memorial to more of the locals who lost their lives in the Great War. And here we can see the dedication to the local scout group. And I do like that on that board where it says, like, the former scouts, and as they join the forces, which different ones they join, like they got the RAF, the Navy, etc. And there's the beautiful scout window, who it was produced apparently by a local lady down in Brighton, and you can see some beautiful photographs in the stained glass window. So that must be quite a modern thing that they can do nowadays and print it on. As you can tell, I don't know anything about stained glass windows, but you can see there that there's a picture of a couple of people. Really nice. And as we go around the corner here, you'll see the magnificent spread-winged brass eagle lectern, and it's a copy of one in Southwell Minster, Nottinghamshire, which is made of 16th century Flemish brass. So this reproduction here in Shipley was given by the Ludder family at the time of the church's restoration in 1893. We look at the tower arches. They're deeply set with carved mouldings, roll mouldings on the soffit, and some corbels with faces. So some shaped like heads, and other just subtly blending austerity with artistry. But one of the arches feels especially heavy and fortress-like. Perhaps it's a reflection of its Templar roots, an echo of military, religious order who valued strength and simplicity and functionality over flamboyant decoration. Over the century, like most churches, it has undergone a number of changes, but I do think it's retained much of its character. In the 19th century, a new north aisle and vestry were built, but an earlier medieval spire was removed and replaced by battlements. In the church you find a great mixture of historic plus there's more modern features. For example, the plain, strong, normal architecture sits alongside later additions like pews, a pulpit and the organ, which are much more recent. But one of the most striking treasures in this church is this breathtaking alabaster tomb of Sir Thomas Caryll and his family, which is dated from 1616. The tomb lies to the south of the altar and it stands out as a beautifully carved monument from the early Stuart period. It's a reminder that this church has also served generations of local families, not just the Knights Templars or other medieval orders. The detail on this, given how small the parish is, we're in rural Sussex, not in a cathedral, and it's 400 years old. The chancel floor tiling is a mosaic style. I've never seen this before in a church, but unfortunately I couldn't find out any more information. And there's a couple of interesting artefacts. That's the Shipley reliquary. I don't know how you say that word, I'm probably mispronouncing it. It came from Limoges in France, probably brought by the Knights Templar to move stuff around. It disappeared, then they refound it, and it's currently in Horsham Museum on display. If I'm ever there, I'll take a look at it. And then you've got this lovely little wooden collection tray from 1665. I love the fact that the community here at St Mary's seems to embrace both tradition and present day life. There are bell ringers, choirs, regular services, and it looks like they do loads of outreach to families and children in the community, ensuring that this lovely little church stays rooted in today, even though it carries centuries of history. And this lovely memorial to stoker John Gratwick, who very sadly drowned on HMS Invincible in 1910. Because of its Templar founding, the church is a rare surviving example of early military order architecture adapted for worship. Its plainness is so understated, the heavy arches, etc. all reflect a mindset very different from grand cathedrals which were built to impress. This was definitely built for simplicity, strength and spiritual purpose. Now we're just going to have a little stroll along the lane down to see a couple of interesting local places, and I found this lovely phone box which is obviously very well looked after. It looks like it's had some French paint with the post box. Very quintessentially English, I should say. So this lovely home here belonged to a gentleman called Hilaire Belloc, and he was a celebrated poet, writer and thinker, and he lived here in the village. And there's, if you're more interested in Hilaire, you can pause here and have a little bit read of the information board here. And now if this windmill looks familiar to you, there's a really good reason. This was the fictional home of Jonathan Creek in the BBC series. He was a quirky, brilliant magician's assistant who solved strange mysteries. I'm not sure if any of you ever watched it, but the mill became his eccentric hideaway in the TV show. And this windmill was on Hilaire Belloc's property, and you can see the property there just behind. And I spotted this, which I thought looked a little bit creepy, like a statue. I have no idea what it was doing there. There was no information. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, if you could please like and subscribe, it will really help out my little YouTube channel, and I shall see you for the next one.